What if your awakening is not real? Not in the way you think, not in the way you've been told, but something else entirely, something far more subtle. Because there is a possibility that what you call awakening is just another layer of the system, a more refined one, a more intelligent one, a version that feels deeper, but keeps you exactly where you are. And the most unsettling part is this: you wouldn't notice it, because it would feel like progress. It would feel like clarity. It would feel like you're finally understanding things, but your life wouldn't actually change. Not in any fundamental way. The same patterns, the same reactions, the same internal loops, just with better explanations. And this is where the question becomes uncomfortable. Because at some point, you have to ask yourself, if I've awakened, why does everything still feel the same? Why do I still repeat the same cycles? Why do I still feel stuck, even after understanding so much? And the usual answer is simple. I just need to go deeper. I need more awareness. I need more truth. So you keep going. You read more, you watch more, you reflect more, you analyze yourself more, and it feels like you're moving forward. But what if you're not? What if all of that movement is part of the mechanism itself? This is something the Gnostic texts hinted at in a way most people miss. They didn't describe ignorance as the only problem. They described something else, a condition where people begin to see but continue acting from the same place. A state where awareness increases, but identification remains. And that creates a very specific illusion, the illusion of awakening. Because now you can see the patterns, you can describe them, you can explain them, you can even teach them, but you are still inside them. And this is where the system becomes almost invisible, because it no longer needs to hide. It evolves, it adapts, it incorporates your awareness into itself. So instead of escaping the structure, you become more deeply embedded in it. But now with insight, now with language, now with understanding. And that makes it harder to detect, because everything feels right, everything feels aligned, everything feels like growth. And yet, nothing truly shifts, and this is where something strange begins to appear. A quiet doubt, not loud, not obvious, but persistent. A feeling that something is still off, even after everything you've understood, even after everything you've learned. And most people ignore that feeling. They push past it. They tell themselves they just need more time, more clarity, more progress. But what if that doubt is the most honest thing you have? What if it's pointing to something that your understanding cannot resolve? Because this is where the real question begins. Not, how do I awaken? But, what if I never actually left the system at all? To understand this, you have to stop thinking of the system as something outside you, not a government, not society, not something you can point at. Because the Gnostic texts never described it that way. They described something much more intimate, a structure that exists within perception itself, the way you interpret, the way you react, the way meaning forms automatically, without you choosing it. They called these forces Archons, but not as beings floating somewhere above you, as patterns, as organizing principles, as the architecture of how reality appears in your mind. And above that structure, they described something else, the Demiurge, not simply as a creator of the world, but as a creator of a limited way of seeing, a system that feels complete, but is not, a reality that seems final, but is actually closed, and everything inside it reinforces itself. Thoughts reinforce identity. Identity reinforces behavior. Behavior reinforces perception again. A loop, a perfectly functioning loop. And the reason it's so effective is because it doesn't feel like a prison. It feels like reality. Now here's where things become more subtle, because awakening, in the way most people understand it, happens inside this structure. You start questioning things, you notice patterns, you become more aware. But all of that is still happening within the same system. You're seeing more clearly, but you're still seeing through the same lens, and that lens is never questioned. So what happens? The system adapts. It doesn't resist your awareness, it absorbs it. It gives you new language, new ideas, new frameworks, spiritual concepts, philosophical explanations, everything you need to feel like you're moving beyond it, but you're still inside it, just in a more refined position. And this is why it's so difficult to detect, because it feels like growth. It feels like expansion. But if you look closely, the core movement hasn't changed. You're still trying, still analyzing, still interpreting everything that happens, still doing something with every insight you have. And that doing is the key, because the system does not survive through ignorance alone. It survives through activity, through the constant need to act on what you see, to use it, to apply it, to turn it into progress. And as long as that movement continues, the loop remains intact. This is why so many people feel like they are evolving, but never actually arrive anywhere. They accumulate understanding, they collect insights, they refine their perspective, but their life, at its core, remains the same. The same internal tension, the same patterns, the same subtle dissatisfaction, just explained in a more sophisticated way. And at some point, that becomes impossible to ignore, because no matter how much you understand, something isn't shifting. And that's when the doubt deepens, because now the question is no longer, what am I missing? It becomes, what if I'm doing something wrong? But even that question can be part of the system, because it keeps you moving, keeps you searching, keeps you trying to fix something. And as long as you're trying to fix it, you're still participating, still feeding the loop. This is what makes the structure so stable. It doesn't need to stop you from waking up. It only needs to make sure that when you begin to see, you immediately do something with it, because that movement is what keeps everything in place. And once you start noticing that, something shifts, not dramatically, but enough that you begin to question the entire process, not just what you're seeing, but what you're doing after you see it. And that is where things start to change, because now you're not just observing the patterns, you're beginning to observe the one who is trying to do something about them. And that is where the structure becomes visible, not outside you, but in the way you relate to everything you experience. And once that becomes clear, the idea of awakening starts to feel very different, because now the question is not, how do I wake up? But what exactly is it that keeps me moving inside the system? At some point, this stops being an idea and becomes something you can observe directly, not in theory, not in philosophy, in your own experience, right now. Think about the last time you had a realization, something clicked. You saw a pattern in yourself, a behavior, a reaction, something you had been repeating without noticing. And for a moment, it felt clear, almost obvious. You thought, this is it. This is what I needed to see. And maybe, for a short time, it even felt like something changed. But then, without really noticing how, you were back in it. The same reaction appeared again, the same thought, the same pattern. And even though you had already seen it, it still happened. And that creates a strange contradiction, because now you are aware of the pattern, but you're still inside it. And the natural response is to try harder, to be more conscious, to catch it earlier, to control it, to fix it. But notice what's happening there. You're doing something. Again, you see something and immediately move. You react to your own awareness. You try to apply it, use it, turn it into change. And that movement feels correct. It feels responsible. It feels like growth. But what if that movement is the very thing that keeps the pattern alive? Because every time you see something and then act on it, you're still inside the same mechanism, the same structure, the same need to do something with what you perceive. And that means nothing fundamental has changed. The pattern evolves, becomes more refined, more subtle, but it doesn't disappear, it adapts. And this is where it becomes almost invisible, because now you are not just reacting unconsciously, you are reacting consciously. You are aware of what you're doing, but still doing it. And that creates the illusion of control, the illusion that you are progressing, when in reality, the same loop is repeating, just at a higher level. This is why some people feel stuck for years, not because they are asleep, but because they're too active, too engaged, too involved in their own process. They are constantly observing themselves, analyzing everything, trying to improve, trying to correct, trying to evolve, and all of that feels like movement. But it's movement within the system, not outside of it. And if you look closely, you can see this happening in real time. A thought appears, you notice it. Immediately, you respond to it, you label it, you judge it, you try to change it, or you try to accept it. But even that is a response. Even acceptance, when it is something you do, is still part of the movement. And that's the part that's hardest to see, because it feels right. It feels like you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. But the question is, who is doing it? Who is trying to change? Who is trying to improve? Who is trying to become more aware? Because as long as there is something in you that needs to act on every insight, the system remains intact. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're still doing something. And this is where the shift begins, not when you see the pattern, but when you begin to notice the impulse to move after you see it. That almost automatic reaction to do something, to fix, to adjust, to respond. And for a brief moment, you don't follow it. You see the impulse, but you don't act on it. And in that moment, something strange happens. Nothing, no improvement, no change, no result, just a pause, just stillness. And that stillness can feel uncomfortable because it goes against everything you've learned. Everything tells you to act, to use what you see, to make something happen. But in that pause, you are no longer reinforcing the system. You are not feeding the loop. And even if it's just for a second, that is different. Because for that moment, you are not inside the pattern. You are not maintaining it. You are simply seeing. And that is not something the system can easily absorb, because it depends on your movement, on your participation, on your constant response. So when that response pauses, even briefly, something opens, not as an experience, not as a feeling, but as the absence of the usual movement. And that absence is where everything begins to change. Because now, the question is no longer, how do I fix this? It becomes, what happens if I stop responding, even for a moment? At this point, the question is no longer whether the system exists. It becomes something much more direct, much more personal. Where is it operating right now? Because if everything you've seen so far is true, then the system is not something you escape. It is something you participate in, moment by moment, through the way you think, the way you react, the way you try to change what you see. And that means something very uncomfortable. You're not just inside the system. You are helping maintain it, not intentionally, not consciously, but through the constant movement of your own mind, through the need to do something with everything you become aware of. And this is why it's so difficult to step out of it. Because the moment you see the pattern, the impulse to act appears, to fix it, to improve it, to move beyond it. And that impulse feels correct. It feels necessary. But it is also the mechanism, the thing that keeps everything running. So the shift is not where most people look. It's not in what you understand. It's not in how much you know. It's not even in how aware you become. It's in something much more subtle. What happens after you see? Because that is where the system continues or begins to weaken. If every insight leads to action, the loop continues. If every realization becomes something you use, the structure remains. But if there is a moment, even a brief one, where seeing does not immediately turn into doing, something different appears, not as an achievement, not as progress, but as the absence of the usual movement. And in that absence, the system has nothing to feed on. No reaction, no resistance, no participation, just awareness without interference. And this is where the Gnostic texts point in a direction that most people avoid. They do not tell you what to do, they show you what happens when nothing is done. Not as a technique, not as a practice, but as a natural consequence of seeing clearly. Because when something is seen completely, without distortion, the need to act on it begins to fade. Not because you're forcing it, but because it no longer makes sense. And that is the beginning of a real shift. Not dramatic, not visible from the outside, but fundamental. Because now, the system is no longer being reinforced in the same way. The loop is not being fed with the same intensity. And slowly, quietly, something starts to lose its hold, not through effort, but through the absence of it. And this is why most people never reach this point, because it feels counterintuitive. It feels like doing nothing, like losing control, like not progressing. But what if progress was part of the illusion? What if the need to move forward was the thing keeping you in place? Because the system does not trap you by stopping you. It traps you by keeping you moving. Always searching, always improving, always trying to become something else. And as long as that continues, the loop remains intact. So the real question is not, how do I escape the system? The real question is, what happens if I stop feeding it? Even for a moment. Not forever, not as a rule, just long enough to see what remains when the movement stops. Because if something in you recognizes this, even slightly, then something has already shifted. Not because you did anything, but because you saw something clearly. And once that happens, you cannot completely go back, not to the same unconscious movement, not to the same unquestioned patterns, because now there is a gap, a small distance, between what appears and how you respond to it. And in that gap, The system is no longer absolute. So maybe the question was never, am I awakening? Maybe the real question is, what part of me is still being programmed every time I move without seeing? And what happens when I finally notice it and don't move at all?